What happens if 1,000 mosquitoes bite your hand? Today I will show you things that you will see for the first time in your life. There will be many interesting things. Have you ever wondered what happens if 1,000 mosquitoes bite you at the same time? Today you have a chance to gain new knowledge thanks to this brave experimenter. The drawer in which he stuck his hand was full of mosquitoes. Just look at his hand. I wonder how much his hand itched after that. But this guy got even worse. There were even more mosquitoes in his experiment. And here we have a question. Can mosquitoes drink all of a person's blood? In fact, it all depends on the weight. How many mosquitoes would be needed to drink all a person's blood directly depends on his body weight. Experts give average values based on the amount of blood in the human body and the abilities of insects. One mosquito doesn't need much blood. Protein food in large quantities is required by the female to reproduce healthy offspring and replenish energy reserves. A mosquito that weighs 3.6 mg drinks about 5 mg of blood at a time. To suck all the blood of a person, either a massive attack of 1,800,000 mosquitoes at once is necessary or a gradual and constant attack of insects over several days. On average, an adult's body contains 5 to 6 liters of blood. Experts start from these values. In reality, this can happen if the victim remains motionless without being able to brush off the mosquitoes. Fortunately, in the modern world, such fatal situations have not been recorded. What do we know about the activities of pigeons? They can coo, beg for bread and fly, as well as blow up the turbine of an aircraft. Seriously, birds and airplanes are extremely incompatible things. This is what happens if these two flying objects collide with each other at high speed. In fact, modern aviation has long ago solved the most important protection problems. So if a bird flies straight into the engine, it will not explode. Now this is just a myth. By the way, in order to develop an optimal protection system, scientists had to send a bird to a working turbine more than once. Of course, artificial birds were used, although there is a known case when testers fired frozen chickens from a cannon at a new model of an aircraft. All this is for the safety of passengers. But it was necessary to come up with a way to permanently scare the birds away from the airport territory. After all, the greatest problems with birds usually arose during the takeoff and landing of the aircraft. The method turned out to be original. As a result, many airports around the world began to get rid of birds with the help of birds. Peregrine falcons usually work in the airport detachment, which hunts smaller birds in the wild. Of course, modern technologies also help. Almost in all countries around the perimeter of the airport there are speakers broadcasting the sounds of predators or gunfire. Have you ever wondered why people ride horses but don't ride cows? In fact, few people can give a clear answer to this question, in part because it is really possible to ride cows. Here's a video to prove it. However, for some reason, such races do not turn into a worldwide practice. Maybe you know why? If you know, then tell us about it in the comments. Cleaning wells and sewers is hard and dirty work, and in India it is also very dangerous. The sewer system in this country is so complex and intricate that workers have to manually clean the drains. Indian sewer divers bear a distant resemblance to plumbers around the world, but the difference is still significant. In India, such specialists are hard workers without qualifications and skills who are engaged in the fact that they literally dive into the sewers and clear congestions with their bare hands. To understand the difference between the work of public utilities and sewer divers, it should be borne in mind that the latter do not have overalls and at least minimal equipment and also do not follow any safety rules. Sewerage is a huge problem in India. Even in many wealthy neighborhoods with skyscrapers, there are no pipelines to drain sewage. The mud is discharged directly into rivers. In poor areas it is even worse. The dirt that gets from the surface accumulates very quickly, so 1,000 sewer cleaners are forced to work every day, without days off and holidays. And it should also be noted that without them, Indian cities would have drowned in mud. However, not everyone realizes this and therefore treats the eternally dirty and foul-smelling diver with disdain. And besides, the poor and representatives of the lower castes are engaged in such work. Their hard work sometimes implies complete immersion in clogged pipes, and often workers use an ordinary bucket to clean them. And now let's move from earthly affairs into space, not very far, only into the orbit of our planet. From there, you can clearly see what the surface of the Earth looked like in 1961, when the first manned flight into space was made. And this is how the Earth looks now. After all, nothing like this can fly around our planet, we would have noticed. The fact is that any rocket, for example, one of Elon Musk's rockets, soaring up leaves behind not only a beautiful trail, but also extra parts of the rocket. Some of them fall back to the ground, some burn up in the atmosphere, and others become space debris. A vivid diagram that I showed you, a visual demonstration of how much debris has accumulated around our planet. In 1957, when the first satellite was launched, the orbit was clear, but since then, every space launch has inevitably provoked new space debris. For example, this photo was recently taken from the International Space Station. The crack on the glass did not appear by accident, it was left by a fragment of space debris which collided with the station at full speed. It could be anything, or maybe a screwdriver lost in orbit. Can you imagine what it will be like for an astronaut to collide in outer space with a stream of such debris? But every year it becomes more and more. It would seem what benefits rats can bring. Most of us consider them pests, but you cannot imagine how many lives were saved with the help of these rodents. It's hard to believe, but rats are actively used to find mines. In the Gambia, for example, they not only sniff out explosives, but also do it several times faster and more efficiently than other sappers. There are solid pluses in such search engines. The weight of the rat does not provoke the detonation of the mine. Rodents are fast learners, easy to transport, and inexpensive. In just half an hour, they are able to check an area of 200 square meters. It would take a person 3 days to complete such a task. According to official figures, rats from the Gambia have already found more than 56,000 mines and explosive devices, exploring a total of 23 million square meters of various surfaces. True, people who lived in the 14th century would hardly agree with our enthusiasm. From 1346 to 1353, Europe was engulfed in an epidemic of plague, which was called the Black Death, then tens of millions of people became victims of the disease. According to various estimates, from 30 to 60% of the population of Europe died from the disease. Traditionally, it is believed that the problem was poor hygiene, but recently scientists have found that rats may not have been the root cause of the spread of the epidemic. Presumably, it all started with fleas that were carried not by rats, but by people themselves. By the way, in the 14th century, doctors did not blame rats at all. Medicine was then not at a high level, and it was believed that the disease was transmitted exclusively by touch and airborne droplets. This is how the famous bird masks of the plague doctors came about. By the way, you knew that the massive beak on these masks was not invented for intimidation, but for practical reasons. This is a medieval version of a modern respirator. Medicinal herbs were placed in the beak of such a mask, which detained and also disinfected the air that the doctor breathed. It worked well for the smells, but I'm not sure about the plague. However, the plague doctors were well aware of the danger they were exposed to because they had to not only watch the patients, but also visit them every day. Well, in the comments, write what impressed you the most from what you saw. And also if you were interested, put the like, subscribe to the channel.